If you have multiple retirement accounts, when it comes time for you to take a required minimum distribution, your RMD, do you have to take a little RMD from every single account, or can you bundle it up and just take it from one or a couple? I've got that explanation and rules coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. All right, I think it's fairly common through diversification or working at multiple employers or whatever the reason that you're going to have multiple retirement accounts, multiple investment accounts that you've saved up for retirement in, and that, by the time you get to retirement or age 72, you might have multiple accounts. Now, if you're working with a certified financial planner, hopefully they're helping you to simplify your financial life. That's part of the value that they should bring. There's so much complexity in today's world, especially in the investment world. It'd be fantastic to simplify your investments. But even doing that, you might not be able to simplify and have all of your retirement accounts, pre-tax retirement accounts, all bundled into one account. So what do you do when you have multiple pre-tax retirement accounts that you have to take a required minimum distribution from? Do you have to take a required distribution from each of them, or can you bundle them up or take it just from one account or from two? What are those rules? I want to credit one of our all-star CFPs on the Korhorn Financial Group team, Ben DeBach, for coming up with this idea. And he said, hey, I don't think you've talked about this yet. Question comes up all the time. Love it. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. And to me, I think there's three different scenarios that we should consider going from really likely to not as likely as we talk through these rules, okay? So let's get into that first scenario, which is, all right, I've reached age 72, which is the new age that you've got to, you're forced to take a required minimum distribution. It used to be age 70 and a half for no reason. Now it's age 72, because guess what? They made that up as well from the Secure Act. They're talking about making it 75, but at the time I'm recording, age 72. You show up at age 72 and you've got a couple different IRA accounts, okay? You've got an IRA over here, an IRA over there. You've got, for whatever the reason, you've got a couple IRAs. Do you have to take a required minimum distribution from each of those separately, or can you bundle them together? This is the likely scenario, and it's a likely answer. You probably already guessed it. There's no multiple choice. And that is, you can actually take one RMD for all of the accounts just from one account if you want, okay? You do have to calculate what is the required distribution in total for all of your IRA accounts, but then you don't have to take a certain amount from each one. You could take it all from just one. You could take it, from two out of the three. You could take it from all three. It's really up to you. You can look at all of your IRAs together and choose to take your required minimum distribution in any number of ways, just as long as that total amount comes out of all of your IRAs or from your IRAs in aggregate. Wow, it's hard to say. Okay, so let's go through an example. I'm meeting with someone recently, and she's 80. Okay, it's the parent for some clients that I serve, and I see her once, twice a year just to review how things are going, and so she's got an IRA with us, and she's not withdrawing the money or not needing enough, and so we calculate her required minimum distribution, and okay, this is the amount that you need to take out. But then, as this generation typically did, she's got a couple IRAs at different banks, and she likes it. They're just sitting in CDs, and by the time I met her, we could have talked about, hey, should you invest these, blah blah blah, but she just liked having those there. And so I asked her, okay, well, did you take your required distribution from the bank? And she didn't know. She couldn't remember. And I said, well, is it automatically set up? I think I told you to do that a couple years ago. I don't remember. So right there in the meeting, we called the bank. And thankfully, we got someone that would cooperate and give us the answer and blah, blah, blah. And no, she hadn't set it up on an automatic RMD withdrawal, and she hadn't taken it yet. And so we calculated, all right, how much is that required distribution from that account? And we just took it from the account that she had with us. So she had two IRAs, let's use that for the example, two IRAs. We calculated the total required minimum distribution for both of those IRAs, and we took all of that amount just from one of the IRAs. All right, makes sense? Sorry, I'm I'm having a hard time explaining that, but you can aggregate the required minimum distribution across all of your IRAs and just take it from one if you'd like. All right, I think that one's fairly common. Scenario number 2 is also probably common. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but maybe you've got this set up for whatever reason, and that is you've got an IRA or maybe a couple IRAs, but you also have an old retirement plan. Say you've got a 401k as well that you're leaving there and you're not working. So if you are working and you have a 401k and you're age 72 or older, you do not need to take a required minimum distribution from that account. You don't need to. You're exempt from taking it from the 401k because you're still working. Now, there are not as many people older than age 72 that are still working. It's more rare. So if you are retired over age 72 and have some dollars in a 401k, in an old 401k, can you, just like your IRAs, can you calculate your total required minimum distribution from each of those accounts and just all bundle it and take it from one account, whether you take it all from your IRA or take it all from the 401k? Can you do that? No, you cannot. Those are different account types. You can aggregate all of your IRAs. You can't aggregate a 401k into that IRA for required minimum distribution purposes. Therefore, in that scenario, you'd have to calculate what's my RMD from all my IRAs, and you can choose to take that from each or from one, okay? And then you've got to look at each 401k separately. Say you've got multiple old 401ks. You've got to look at each of them separately, calculate their own required distribution, minimum distribution on each, and withdraw that amount from each of your old 401ks. That doesn't work that way for 403bs. For 403bs, those are also separate from IRA, so you've got to take your RMD separate. But for 403bs, my understanding is you can aggregate, if you have 3 or 2 old 403bs, you can aggregate all of those and just take it from one, but not with 401ks. You've got to take a required distribution from each of those old 401ks. What about a simple IRA? That's more rare. No, that's part of the IRA family. You can bundle that together. So work with your CFP. Again, there should be very little reason why, when you're retired and you've left an employer, why you have that old 401k there. It should be rolled over and combined with your IRA. Simplicity, I mean, just this reason alone is one of the reasons to consider it. But if you've got them separate, your RMDs need to be separate. And then the third scenario is even more rare, and that is I've got an IRA and I need to start taking, or I need to take my required minimum distribution, but then I've also inherited an IRA from maybe my folks, and I've got to take a required distribution from that as well. Can I combine those? They're both IRAs. That's my IRAs and my inherited IRA. Can I take a required minimum distribution from just one of those for the whole thing, or do I need to take it separately? Yeah, you'd guess this one as well. You've got to take those separate. You can aggregate all of your IRAs and take one required minimum distribution from just one of those to cover all of them. But your beneficial designated account IRA, your inherited from a non-spouse IRAs, those required distributions are separate from your own IRAs. Now, if you inherited multiple IRAs from the same original owner, you can aggregate those. But if you've got multiple inherited IRAs from multiple people, then you've got to take those separate as well. All right, so you can't commingle inherited IRAs and that required minimum distribution from your own IRAs and that required minimum distribution. Wow, this gets complicated. You can see it gets complicated in a hurry. So thanks again, Ben, for bringing this topic up, because it's very confusing. If you're not doing comprehensive financial planning, I think it'd be easy to make this mistake. Take the wrong amount out, or not take enough out, something like that, or just forget to take it altogether. And don't worry, what's the penalty? Only 50%. Plus, you then have to pay the tax on that money. So you're not going to want to make this mistake. Work with the CFP to make sure you get this right. And then the other thing is, I don't know how, if you're not working with the CFP, I don't know how you optimize this. There are some ways, depending on your tax situation, the rest of your financial life, there are ways where you might want to consider, you know what, I should be doing this. It will improve my situation in this way. An RMD strategy doesn't apply to everyone, but if it applies to you, I have no idea how you pull that off on your own without working with the CFP. So work with the CFP on that. Make sure they're doing comprehensive financial planning. Make sure you avoid these common required minimum distribution mistakes. All right, if you don't have a CFP on your team, you can always contact one on my team. You can find us online, korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with a K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.